Hello, my name is Christine and I run a vintage shop called Prima Treasures on Etsy. Before we jump in today, I just wanted to put out there that if anyone has any items or type of items that they want to know more about and haven't had any luck, you're more than welcome to share that in the comments, and if there's anything I can find out, I'll be happy to do a video on it. So if you're looking for help in that direction, let me know. Moving on, today I picked something that I think is kind of obscure to talk about, and you can see right here that this is a framed image of a small person, and the reason I say small person is even though the styling is a little weird, this is actually a child. So the thing that I like about these and what it is essentially is called a brass rubbing. These were popular in the 1970s and earlier as souvenirs. So people would go to England, which is one of the places where you would primarily see these ornamental brasses. And when they went, they were allowed to take a piece of paper and given what I assume was essentially a wax crayon type thing. And they would take the paper, they would lay it over the brass sculpture, and they would use the crayon to kind of rub it into the paper and make a copy of the image. And then they could take that home. And this practice was banned sometime in the 1970s. I don't think I've gotten a clear date, because it was actually damaging the brass objects themselves. So they stopped letting tourists do that. And now it's getting more and more difficult to find these original rubbings because it's been, probably close to 60 years since anyone was allowed to do it. So the thing I think is cool about them is that they're often done like this on a black piece of paper with gold as the rubbed component, the wax, I guess. And so it makes a pretty striking image when you find one. And normally the rubbings will be of medieval Renaissance era women. Very often you'll find men who are either lords or knights or that kind of thing. So it's typically like a portrait situation. It's not action scenes or anything like that. But the cool part for me is that these are actual monuments that exist in England, and you're getting an original rubbing of said monument that you can use as art in your home. So if you're someone who's interested in that, medieval Renaissance era and you want to have decor in your home that reflects it, a brass rubbing is a cool way to get something that's actually somewhat authentic in nature, because this is an actual piece of history that exists in England, and you're getting essentially a mirror image of it that you can hang on your wall. And that's not to say that there aren't reproductions of these brass rubbings that you can purchase, like a digital copy. But to have something that was actually there and made from the rubbing itself, or from the ornamental brass itself, I think gives it a little bit more authenticity. So this particular rubbing caught my eye because it's a small person, and that's not common. I hadn't seen any that were of children. And from what I read about it, it's not common for children to be included in this because typically an ornamental brass would have been done for a prominent figure in the community, either, some royalty of the area or wealthy families, landowners, that kind of thing. So for a child to be included would have been unusual, and in all likelihood, from the reading that I did on this suggests that children, when they were done, were either because they passed away early and their family wanted to remember them, and again, probably a wealthy family, or it was a child who later went on to become a prominent figure. So either way, as I said, I didn't see a lot of them, so this one caught my eye as unusual. But you can get more traditional ones, as I said, that look like medieval ladies or knights or royalty, that kind of thing. That's mostly what you would likely see. And the other interesting thing I wanted to point out about this particular one, because this is a common thing that you will see, the fun thing about these brass rubbings is a lot of times because people brought them as a souvenir, they would actually mark them and tell you when they made it. So this one right here, usually they handwrite it. This person actually went to the trouble to make a little printed tag. But she made this rubbing in 1970. And then she put here that it's a young boy from 1587. So a lot of times you'll get actual history, not just of the rubbing itself, but also when the person made it. So that helps you date how old this particular rubbing is. So I kind of like that about the rubbings, that people took the time to document their experience, probably because they wanted to remember their trip, but it helps us when we're going to resell that item, instead of just making the assumption, well, we know they didn't let them make rubbings after the 70s, so it's probably at least that old. But right here, luckily for me, this owner took the time to actually put down her experience, and that way I know exactly what year it was made, and that is not unusual. So a lot of vintage items don't have dates on them, and I'm always excited when I see a certain type of product that actually does, because then it gives you a very hard timeline of when that object is from. Anyway, so I think that these brass rubbings are interesting and unusual, and I think they let us get a look in our home that can be difficult to get in another way. So I hope that you found the history of this particular piece interesting, and if you see one out in the wild, I would definitely get it a second look and consider taking it home, because as I said, we can't make these anymore, and they're getting harder and harder to come by. People usually don't think much of them, and they don't charge a lot for them, and most of the ones I've seen have been probably 3 feet tall. So, I mean, fairly good size and a fairly dramatic kind of piece. And if you can get something that big for $50 or less, I think you've made a good deal. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed learning about the brass rubbings today, and I appreciate you watching.